Welcome, welcome, welcome to today's webinar, and thanks for joining. We're very excited to share this exciting presentation with you today. I'm Nisha Bakshi, and I'm on the developer marketing team here at Salesforce. Today, we're joined by esteemed members of our product team, Arnab Bose, Alex Edelstein, and Jason Teller, to talk about how to get into Lightning Flow development. Before I begin, just a quick note that when considering future developments, whether by us or any other solution provider, you should always base your purchasing decisions based on products and features that are already generally available. And with that, I'll hand it over to Arnab.
Awesome. Thank you, Nisha, for that introduction. And I'm super excited to be here with Alex and Jason on my product management team to walk everybody through what's new with Lightning Flow. Here's our agenda for today. We'll do a brief Lightning Flow overview, which I'll provide. And then we'll quickly jump into some pretty in-depth demos from both Alex and Jason to showcase how you can build rich, engaging, process-driven applications using Lightning Flow. We'll end with a bit of insight into the Lightning Flow roadmap for next year, and we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. I like to start my presentations by talking a little bit about why we built Lightning Flow here at Salesforce. We've built it to solve the dev admin challenge around building seamless experiences. Today, if you want to go ahead and build experiences using other technologies, you have to build your process logic, you have to integrate systems, you have to build your user experience, and you have to think about how you embed all of those experiences into every single touch point to actually automate processes around your customer or your employee. All of this takes time and code, and these are disconnected experiences. Lightning Flow is all about taking that, bringing it together so you can build a seamless experience easily, quickly, around your customer, around your employee. So here's what Lightning Flow is. Lightning Flow is our declarative process automation technology here at Salesforce that enables you to go ahead and build out rich and dynamic app experiences. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner of the slide, the Lightning Flow system is built on our existing Flow engine, which we've had at Salesforce for over 6 or 7 years now. On that, we have a couple of declarative automation tools. We have Process Builder, which is widely used and loved. I'm sure that everybody on this call has used Process Builder before. And we have Visual Workflow, which is coming up with a whole brand new builder in spring, which we're calling the Flow Builder. That is going to totally revolutionize the way in which you go ahead and build out flows. And we'll give you guys a sneak peek into what that new Flow Builder looks like later on in our session today. With Lightning Flow, we went ahead and supercharged this existing set of builders and engine with 3 different things. One is we allowed customers and developers to go ahead and use Lightning components for flow screens that give you full pixel-to-pixel control over what UI gets represented to your customers and your employees. It also enables you to go ahead and build out these visual components once and then reuse them declaratively n number of times across all of your flows going forward. So that's one big piece. The second thing we did on the engine side is we've made it super easy for you to use Flow to integrate with different processes and third-party systems. We now support both waiting for and publishing platform events from both Flow and Process Builder. We've added support for external services, which is a declarative way to go ahead and connect to third-party systems. We launched Flow Local Actions in the summer, and there's even more on the roadmap over here. And then finally, we've worked with our partners on the Lightning App Builder team and the Lightning Community Builder team to go ahead and make it super easy to embed flows and distribute these visual flows into every single process-driven app. And so this combined system ends up being Lightning Flow. Like Lightning Flow is this sort of set of tools, set of components, set of integration technologies that let you go ahead and build out these rich and dynamic app experiences. And the important thing about Lightning Flow is it is connected deeply into the entire fabric of the Salesforce platform, which means you can combine Lightning Flow with App Builder, you can combine Lightning Flow with Community Builder. We have a new Flow Actions category on AppExchange, which we'll showcase again today, where our ecosystem is going ahead and building out new Flow screen components and new Flow integration actions, which enable you to build more dynamic and rich apps. We have Einstein Next Best Action, which is coming out in the spring timeframe, which we'll touch briefly on today in our demo. And then obviously things like Object Creator and Schema Builder, which are standard Salesforce platform functionality, also enable you to go ahead and create objects that you can use within Flow or Process Builder. So think about how Lightning Flow ends up stitching together all of these different admin and developer-facing tools that the Salesforce platform brings to bear. And they, in combination, enable you to go ahead and build out the richest, most dynamic app experiences for your customers and your end users. With that, let's kind of jump into what's new. The big thing that we're announcing in spring is the new Flow Builder. The Flow Builder is going to be available in the spring release, Safe Harbor, since spring is still not out as yet. But Alex, Jason, and I have been hard at work over the last year and a half building out this new builder. It's going to be familiar and intuitive. It's going to have lightning fast performance because it's built using all Lightning components. You can say goodbye to Flash because there's no more Flash in the new builder. And it's going to be seamless and integrated. It's going to ensure that all your existing flows that you've built up continue to run like they did before. And it's going to mean that every single flow you've created in the past using the Cloudflow Designer will open up in the new Flow Builder going forward. So it's all about making flows easy to build, making flows faster to build, and no compromises from the point of view of making sure that all your existing flows keep working, and then all your existing flows can be opened up and edited in the new Flow Builder. So with that, I'm going to kind of move over to a demo to show you what this new Flow Builder looks like. And in order to explain the thesis behind this demo, I want to start out at Trailhead. Trailhead is the best place to go ahead and get started with Lightning Flow. I'm looking at the Lightning Flow Trailhead module and specifically looking at this section within it about combining the power of Process Builder and Cloudflow Designer. So a lot of times we get a question around when should I use Process Builder versus when should I use Flow? Think about Flow as the tool that has the complete capabilities of our Flow engine. So if you want to submit a related record for approval, so a record that is not directly associated with the Process Builder process, if you want to delete records, or if you want to create a bunch of different records and associate them with each other using complex logic, these are all good use cases where you want to combine the power of Process Builder with Flow to ensure that that entire end-to-end process can be built out declaratively going forward. The use case that I've gone ahead and built out using the new Flow Builder is around cloning records with children. And the idea is once you've closed an opportunity as one, you want to create a renewal opportunity a year out in the future and clone and bring forward all the related products from that original opportunity. So this requires you to loop over the products. It requires you to copy over those related records and actually create that renewal opportunity. And the way you do that is you'd first build a Process Builder process that would fire whenever an opportunity is closed as one. And then you'd go ahead and use the scheduled action to go ahead and actually create that renewal opportunity using Flow. So let's take a look at what that flow looks like. And let me first get you oriented. The way to find Flow and setup is you search for Flow, and it's under Process Automation. And then this is one of my pre-release orgs, so I actually have access to the new Lightning Flow Builder. So you see that little button over there. But I'll actually show you what a flow built out in Lightning Flow Builder actually looks like. So I actually have that renewal opportunity flow. Built out over here. So let me just scroll down and find it. So that's renew opportunity. When I hit open, it's going to open up that flow in Lightning Flow Builder. So if I'm going to click on open over here, you'll notice that in a couple of seconds, boom, that's the new Lightning Flow Builder. No more Flash. It's looking exactly the way all other Lightning app builders and builders look like, with that consistent bar across the top, a way to get back to your list view, and a completely reimagined canvas and palette. The first thing I'll show off is with the canvas, we have new panning and zooming capabilities. So you can actually drag that canvas around and get to sections of your flow that you need to look into. There's also a snap feature where it'll kind of focus that flow right in the center of your screen. We have a new start element that every flow gets when you create a brand new flow. This was a pain point from many existing Flow users in the past, where people forgot to actually assign an element as a start element, and that caused issues when they were trying to activate and run the flow. We've made it very simple and straightforward going into this new Lightning Flow Builder. And then finally, if you take a look at the left-hand side palette, we've simplified the palette significantly. Gone are the days where you have to reason about fast update versus update. It's a single action called update records. And within that, there's going to be sort of takes take you through why you want to use fast update versus the full update functionality. No longer do you have to think about which one you want to choose before you drag it onto the canvas. We've also significantly simplified the number of actions you can take. You can simply drag and drop in an action or an Apex component onto the screen, and then use that particular component to configure the specific action you want to choose. Each of these individual configuration elements are also updated. So if I double click on that, you'll see that we have a brand new way in which you could go ahead and set these variable operator value kind of expressions. They support type ahead search. They'll give you suggestions. And it's going to be a far more simplified flow building experience going forward. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand it off to Alex. This was just a quick preview of what the flow builder is going to look like. I hope you guys are excited about the new canvas, the new elements, the fast flash-free experience. What I want to do next is I want to transition the story towards, okay, if building flows is becoming easier and faster with the flow builder, how does building richer and more sophisticated flows become faster and easier with what we've built with Flow Actions and our Flow ecosystem? So off to Alex.
All right, excellent. I'm excited to show you some facets of Flow involving our actions and components. If you will pass me the presenter. Excellent. All right, so one of the big force was the new Flow Solutions section of the AppExchange. And the reason that we have created this new section is there is an increasing number of actions, components, and solutions that you can install into your org with a single click. And this really makes it easier to develop richer and more powerful solutions. And I'm going to give you a little demonstration of how you can use components and actions to take a flow and give it a lot of extra power. So the components that I'm talking about are screen components that you can drag into a flow screen. What you see right here are 7 components that we added officially in the Winter 19 release. We've got a couple more coming in the Spring 19 release. And there's also a growing number of components that are built by the ecosystem and made available on community websites. So we're going to look at the actions and screen components. And for this, let me take you to this example right here. So I'm taking us back to the old Cloudflow Designers. This is probably the last webinar where you will ever see this because of how much better the Flow Builder that I just demonstrated is. Now, I'm going to go here to a contact page, and I'm going to process a travel request. And you can see that I'm going to launch this flow by clicking on a button that's added in a very convenient location. And here comes my flow. I'm going to use a lookup component that I've installed from the community. And then I'm going to basically process this person's travel request. So I'm going to book them on a train, and I'm going to put them in first class. Now, what happens next is kind of interesting. It's brand new. This is the first time we've ever shown this. We're going to take this information, and we're going to create a quip sheet out of it. And then we're going to take that quip sheet, which we've made custom for Susan, and we're going to send her an email with a URL that takes her right to her custom quip sheet. So I'm going to click next. And now, while that's starting to process, let's switch over. This is the email account that I've created for Susan. And you can see there's the email. It's come right into the inbox. And there's a custom link here. And when I click on this link, it takes me to my custom quip sheet. So we've used Flow to automatically take data from Salesforce, created in this case by perhaps a Service Cloud agent, and not just save that into Salesforce records, but also make that available in a highly collaborative, easily distributable quip sheet that can be sent to anyone who's got an email address. So, okay, that's kind of nice, but I'd like to improve this. I'd like to make it a little easier and a little faster for the process to take place. So I'm going to change my flow. And you'll recall that I mentioned AppExchange. So if we go up to AppExchange, I'm going to go to the Flow Solutions section and see what's available to improve my flow. make it a little more visual so that the person filling out the flow can save a few seconds every time they have to do it. Now you can see there's a lot of stuff to choose from here. And I am going to choose something called Flow Magic Pick Lists. I want to add a little magic to my pick lists. And you can see here that I can click here to get it now. I can log in and pick the org that I want to install it to. There's a video. This was actually created by some Salesforce employees, and it's an example of how anybody can create a useful extension to Flow, add it to AppExchange, and make it available for everyone. Now, I'm not going to, I've already got this installed into my org. So to hook it up, I'm going to change my flow slightly. And then I'm going to activate my modified flow. Now, I've already gone and configured this. This is actually the Flow Magic Editor app. So when I installed this particular flow action, it has an elegant custom user interface here that shows up so the admin can configure their visual pick lists. And so now let's activate this, and then let's go and rerun our flow. So I'm going to go here. I need to quickly reload to make sure we're picking up the latest changes. And now when I process the travel request, you can see that I'm getting a highly visual pick list. So without any code, I've been able to customize this. And let's do the same thing that we did before. Let's choose an automobile. And now we've got our transportation class, and it's a little faster. I don't have to click on a drop down. I can just pick the thing that I want. And the rest of the flow operates the same way. So you can change one part of the flow without affecting any of the other functionalities. So now we go back and we once again look in the inbox. Here again, the custom URL, and that brings up our custom report, our shared collaborative Quip sheet. So you can see how I've been able to very quickly mix a combination. Let me take us right back in here one final time. Mix a combination of flow actions and flow screen components to add a lot of power to my flow, but also usability to the user experience and the customer engagement. And you can see that this is all possible with just 5 or 6 different flow actions. And so with that introduction to the latest things happening in components and actions, I'm going to hand it back over.
Awesome, thank you, Alex. So with that, we'll transition to Jason, and Jason's going to show us a more complete end-to-end demo using Flow. So let me...
I'll change presenter to you, Jason.
There you go.
There you go. All you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Alex. So this is actually, pretty incredible stuff. What Arnab and Alex have shown us is really how easy it's becoming to actually create these sort of engaging processes and visual experiences. I can't overemphasize, I got a lot of questions at Dreamforce where, the question was, well, I understand you can build something like this. How do I do it? It's difficult. There's all these visuals that I'd love to have, but it's hard to actually show these things. What do I have to do in these situations? And as you can tell, we've aligned our strategy really around the ability to create these screens easily, quickly, and in a very visually engaging manner. So check out those magic pick lists. Look for more to come. We're going to have a great screen building experience coming in the spring and in the future. And this is really a huge emphasis for us to help you really jumpstart the ability to build these screens and these visual processes very quickly. So I'm going to talk a little bit about getting into the flow. Basically, using flow in your development process and the different aspects of that. And I would like to start off with the demo. We talked a little bit about how you build, and that's really what Arnab and Alex were talking about. Then the question sort of comes up, well, we're talking about process-driven apps. What does that look like? What does a flow look like in the overall ecosystem of the Lightning platform? So I'm going to be doing a demo that basically shows you Lightning Flow with platform events, external services, and Lightning communities as well. So in this particular demo, we're actually going to be representing Electron Motors. And in this case, we have 3 different personas. One is somebody that actually needs to use the dealer portal to schedule a repair and order associated parts for a car. The second persona is actually somebody at the dealer. We can call them, say, the procurement person. That would be Eric in this particular case. And Eric's responsibility is to go ahead and order those parts from a third-party distributor. And then the third persona, of course, is the person at the third-party distributor who has an external system or an external app. In this case, it's a Heroku app representing that third-party distributor. So essentially, we'll be hopping between different personas in a very sort of real-world use case of how you can use flow in a number of different systems and a number of different areas to give yourself an overall engaging experience. And ultimately, what we're trying to do here is show how you can have multiple processes, i.e. 3 different parts that need to be ordered, which then have to come back together and be fulfilled before you can continue your larger process, which is, again, a question that does come up, because in the real world, not everything is a single-threaded process that you have to do. You do have multiple things that need to happen between different people. All right, so with that overview, let's just jump right into it. First of all, I'm on the Dealer Portal. This is actually a community site. As you can see, it's mobile responsive, so depending on how big I decide to make this, I can change what it looks like. In this case, let's use the mobile form factor, and I'm going to go ahead and create a repair request. When I click on this repair request, I'm actually launching a Lightning flow. In this particular case, you can see how Lightning components enhance the visual experience. This is a Lightning component. When I do a hover and click on the wheels here, what I'm going to be doing is actually overriding the navigation. Rather than using the next and the back buttons, I can go ahead and click here and essentially do the next button through that button click. So something to keep in mind when you're developing those flows is you don't even have to use the next and the back buttons. You can use visuals that you can click on and then advance the screen. All right, so here we have a number of components also dropped onto the screen to essentially build out this particular screen experience. This is a dependent pick list. When I select on Electron, I select on the car type, I can then select these 2 through the dependent pick list setup. I have a lookup here for the insurance company. I also have a data table here. I'm going to go ahead and select the brake replacement. We actually have a phone field. You can do the regex validation on this phone field if you like, and then a slider bar also for, again, a more easily engaging visual experience.
Hey, Jason, I'm going to ask you a quick question here. So some of these new components are available out of the box starting winter. So I believe you just covered the ones that you think are available.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Some of the
so
improvements around validation.
Definitely.
So
The phone component, the slider bar, the dependent pick lists are all available in our new release coming out. And so you can just drag and drop and use those. If you refer to the slide that Alex had earlier, you can see the list of those particular components.
Those are actually available in Winter 19. When I think of the new release coming out,
right, that's true.
We're almost upon our spring 19
We're
release,
doing spring now,
which is going to add even a couple more beyond that.
And we would have those in spring as well, exactly. Cool, so when I go ahead and click next here, we've done a couple of things, and we're just showing you that in this particular screen, which is one of the powerful things that Flow can do for you is actually be able to manipulate and update multiple objects, object records, I should say, and create them as Arnav was pointing out in his presentation. So in this case, I've basically created a repair request record as well as a repair procedure record. And then I have a button here embedded on the screen, which when I actually click on it will actually give me a place to go when the flow is completed. So we call this flow finish behavior. It's an often requested feature, and this is actually a button from our community where you basically can click on this and you end up on the record page for that particular record that we just created. So we've gone through this from a Lightning community perspective with a flow embedded in it for the first persona. Let's go ahead and shift over to the second persona, this now being Eric Ware, who's working at the dealership. So now we're in a console experience in Lightning. And what I can see here is that I get a chatter post showing that this particular record has been created. When I go to that record, I now have another flow that's actually embedded inside of this page that has a data table component that you can use to essentially pull out the information associated with this particular repair. These are 3 parts that need to be ordered. I'm going to go ahead and click on one of these. And when I click next, I go to that particular record page. In this record page, we have a couple interesting things. One, you can tell it hasn't actually been ordered yet. And then over here on the right, we actually have our NBA component. So our next best action feature is actually debuting in our spring release along with the flow builder. It'll be GA at that point in time. And one of the really cool things about next best action is that you can actually use strategies to take the intelligence that you have to help aid in your decision making inside of your particular process that you're trying to go through, or anywhere actually that you want to actually present this decision functionality. So this component can be dropped onto any of the Lightning pages. And in this case, it's actually saying that we're getting advantageous pricing and shipping arrangements from this particular company, and so you should go ahead and purchase from Brembo. Now, when I click on this particular button, I'm actually launching a flow. And that flow that's being launched is actually then triggering an external service call to the third-party supplier to place the order. The response to the external service call is then updating this particular record showing that it's been ordered. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat this pattern with the external service call with its additional parts. So when I go back to this flow here and I click next, I come on another part record and I'm going to select a vendor this time. So as Alex demonstrated in his demo, you can use a quick action referring to a flow to basically trigger another flow that shows up, to trigger the flow that shows up inside of a modal. This is yet another data table component simply displaying on the screen, pulling that information for the vendor, and then I'm going to pick a vendor. When I click next, I'm yet again doing an external services call out to the third-party vendor to place an order for this particular part. So I'm going to repeat that procedure with the third part here. Again, quick action calling the flow, select the vendor, make an external services call out to that particular vendor. So now I've gone ahead and made all three of these orders. If I refresh here, I can see that the part status is actually ordered in this particular case. So these are all three here. And as Eric Ware at my dealer procurement persona, I've actually placed all these orders. So the next place I'm going to go is to the third-party vendor themselves. So this is a third-party vendor. It's an external app. It's actually a Heroku app. If you look here in this particular case, we decided just to show how full-featured you can make things. This is the Heroku app in here, and it's actually embedded inside a larger community page. So you can combine the information you have, say, from Salesforce in the community page with the external app information, should you choose to do so. But we basically have a Heroku app here that has received 3 external services requests for the 3 different parts we want to order. And then if you watch closely, as I fulfill each one of these parts, I'm going to go ahead and split my screen here. What I have here on my previous Lightning page in the console is a monitor for platform events. And so each time I decide to ship one of these orders, the external the external vendor, where I receive the orders from an external service call, is actually going to place a platform event publish, which I'm subscribed to show me that that order has actually been fulfilled. So this part is actually fulfilled, and as you can see, an event fired to show that that has been fulfilled based on my subscription back at my Salesforce console. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat that for each one of these. So that's 2. And then when I get to the third one, as I mentioned earlier, when all 3 parts have been fulfilled, I can continue my process. And my version of continue my process is to basically say that I'm having a chatter post that'll tell me I've continued my process. Now, how does that work? Well, basically, there's a process builder process that triggers each time the event comes in. And so each time the event comes in, it triggers the process to check, have I actually gotten all of my orders completed before I can continue? Once I do the third order, the process will trigger yet for a third time, and it says, yes, I can go ahead and continue. When I drop down here and refresh my chatter feed, as you can see, it says that all parts have been fulfilled. I'm ready for my repair procedure. So that's the end-to-end on a 3-party, 3-system setup in terms of how you can actually join together a number of different processes to actually fulfill a larger business process. If I walk through what we did, you can get a better sense of how this works. So for the part order flow, particularly around the integration points that we're talking about, for the part order flow, it goes ahead and places these external service calls to the third-party part supplier. Those 3 calls go in, the supplier gets all 3 of those, and then as the supplier fulfills each external service order, it will create a platform event, which the process builder process will trigger off of, and look at the update part request record to see if we've actually got all 3. By the time we get all 3 of them in, it'll go ahead and say you can continue, and that in this case, in the demo as a chatter post. So it's a very powerful way to leverage external services as well as platform events to create a larger business process that you run through, again, with 3 different personas in 3 different systems. One of the things I'd like to show you a little bit, because we get a lot of questions about this, is how do I actually set up one of these external service calls? Because it is something that's very useful. It's a declarative way of actually doing integration, which is something that's pretty rare in the integration space. So all I have to do is go into setup, and if I type in EXT or external services, I end up on the external services page here, and I say I want to add an external service. There's actually a wizard you can do this, plenty with documentation showing you how it works. I'm just going to go ahead and walk through it. So we have to name the service, so I'll just call it, a dev webinar external service. And then we have to go ahead and choose a name credential. So I'm going to use the one from our parts app originally. And then you can actually specify the path that you want to use for your schema, or you can provide a schema. So in this case, I'm actually going to provide the schema. I have it right here from the one that we used inside of the previous demo. So I'll just copy that, and I go back here, and I put in my schema, and I save and go to the next page. What it does is actually generates a number of Apex actions that are available for use inside the flow. So this action is actually a part order post, and here are the fields associated, the input parameters and output rec parameters associated with that particular action. So when I keep this in mind, because I'm actually going to jump into the designer in a second and show you how to use this, this is what this page is talking about. Okay, so we've completely created our external service now. As you can see, it's right here, a dev webinar external service. Now I'm going to go back into Flow. And in this case, I am, as Alex mentioned, probably for the last time, using our Cloudflow Designer. And I'm going to go ahead and load up a new flow. Now, what's really cool about the external service is in 3 simple steps, in a couple of minutes, just like I showed you, we have a call out to a third-party system that we can leverage anywhere we want inside of a particular flow. So once I actually get this loaded, this is really where Arnav's demo of our flow builder shines, in the sense that all he had to do is snap his fingers, while I had to do a little more talking to get this to show up. And now we go ahead and go down to our Apex action section here. And there we go, right here, the very first one, a dev webinar external service. I just drag and drop this into my flow, I give it a name, and then I can select the parameters I want to use. In this case, we have a part ID and a part name that you would be passing through to that third party. You get the outputs, return, etc. Very, very quick way to go ahead and set up an integration. Very, very quick way to deliver on that integration inside of a process. And you can do this multiple times. So it's very, very impressive stuff. All right, cool. So we've gone through those. Let me go ahead and go to my next point here. We've shown you how to actually build very quickly your visual processes and visual flows to create these sort of process-driven apps. Then we've given you a demo of what an end-to-end looks like when you have a process-driven apps with 3 parties and 3 different systems, probably one of the more complicated cases you might run into. And then we get the question, this is all really great, but we're developers, we're trying to do development here along with creating these visual processes, and things don't always work with our continuous integration, continuous development environments. We want Flow to work well with version control systems, etc. And so our sort of variation on the CI/CD setup is Salesforce DX. So we've actually, and there's a demo that we did at Dreamforce around this, enabled Flow to work with CI/CD and version control systems. So a couple of things, just as an overview, for those of you who aren't too familiar with the CI/CD setup, basically it means that you have to use a version control system for code versioning, that you need deployable packaging to make things repeatable, that you have to require tests for all code that's being packaged. That way you're always testing when you're deploying. And then when you actually deploy a package, it has to be active when it's deployed to an environment. Very similar to the diagram that you see here. You start with the version control system, so you have a static definition of what that version is, and then you move it into each of these environments. So that way there's no change control issues as you move into these different environments. So these are the things that we've actually done to support this. The first thing that we've done is that, when you pull from the API, flow and process metadata file names no longer change with the version. You'll get the same name every time, and so therefore you can use it inside of a version control system without any issues. In terms of deployable packaging, this is actually something that already exists. We actually have SFDX scrap orgs as well as the metadata packaging to do the packaging work. And then as far as requiring tests for all code being packaged, we are actually requiring 75% test coverage for headless processes should you choose to enable this functionality. And I say that because it is totally an opt-in set of functionality. A lot of folks have their own sort of processes set up where they go ahead and activate the flows manually, etc. They're not necessarily on a CI/CD or VCS setup. For those folks, nothing changes in your life. Basically, only if you actually want to deploy as active and only if you want to use a VCS to do that in that pattern, can you enable this functionality. And the way you enable that functionality is to go into process automation settings and basically check on the box that says deploy processes and flows as active. When you do check on that box, we will require 75% test coverage. And these are Apex tests. They're essentially like triggers to basically check that the flow is actually run on your headless processes in order to deploy these particular processes as active into your production environment. One thing to note is that the menu selection here under process automation settings will only show up if you are in a production environment. And that's because in the other environments, it just happens automatically. You don't actually need to select this. But for production, again, you have to opt in to leverage this functionality. Cool, so we covered a lot of stuff, a lot of great stuff that we've done in Winter 19. One of the things I also want to mention is that in Winter, we actually are increasing a number of our flow limits, and we've introduced an entitlement limit as well. The flow limits, the number of total total flows that you can have is up to 4,000 now. It went up from 2,000, we've doubled it. Same thing goes for the number of active flows you can have. It was 1,000, now it's actually 2,000. So there's a lot of room there to go ahead and build out lots of new flows on your org. We've also increased the number of paused and waiting interviews from 30,000 to 50,000, so that way you have more space to actually work with this concept of paused interviews and sharing.
For the total flows limit, Jason, we've also separated out the limit for process builder versus flow, right? So you could have up to 2,000 process builder processes active or 4,000 total, and up to 2,000 flows active or 4,000 flows total, right?
Yes, that is correct. So the total numbers and the total active numbers are all per process type now. And that actually extends beyond just process builder and flow. It differentiates between, say, an auto-launched process versus a visual flow, for example. So yes, that is true as well. Looking forward into our roadmap, for our spring release, great demo of our new Lightning Flow Builder. Obviously, that's the most exciting part. We also have a lot of other exciting stuff. The Einstein Next Best Action is GA, as I mentioned when I was doing the demo. And we're actually providing what we call expanded platform support around a couple new ideas, new concepts that we have. One in particular is the idea of having a flow template. This allows you to actually build a process or a flow and have it be used as a template, which allows it, say, in a managed package concept, to be upgradable while still visible to the customer, so that way they can copy and then edit and customize the flow themselves. So anybody who shied away from using flow because basically it's not visible to customer and can't be used in a declarative manner to go ahead and customize, it's now enabled for you through the concept of flow templates. The other thing we're supporting is external objects inside of flows and processes. So this allows you to go ahead and create that virtualization of your external object data and leverage it inside of both Flow and Process Builder. And we're also supporting standard events. Standard events are basically platform events that are being generated by other Salesforce apps. And so now you can trigger off of these events with both Flow with Process Builder as well as through Flow as well. So it's really cool. You should look out for this stuff. Basically, if you see a standard event being triggered by any apps you're using, you can then actually trigger a process off of that. In the longer term, we're actually looking to improve our builder experience. Like I mentioned, the screen building experience, really creating these visual processes. We actually want to introduce complex or type support, which is essentially going to be Apex type support because that's our type system since we're Salesforce. This is something a lot of folks have asked for, basically being able to handle things like nested objects inside of Flow. We're also going to be doing more around Flow metrics and being able to provide more insight into the flows that are actually running in your org, say your top running flows, your longest running flows, things like that, as well as hopefully provide better testing capabilities, in line with some of the CI/CD work that we've done. So lots of exciting stuff in our roadmap. Keep coming back. We've definitely got a lot more to announce as we move along. I think at this point, we are ready for some Q&A.
All right. First question. Will I have to change my flows to get them to work in the new Flow Builder?
So the answer for that is no. All existing flows, whether auto-launched or flows with screens, will be flows that you can open up and edit in the new Flow Builder. When you go ahead and make a change to that flow in the new Flow Builder and hit save, at that point in time, we will automatically give that as a net new version of the flow. So this will mean that you will always have a last known good version of the flow saved using Cloudflow Designer that you can go back to in case there are any questions or issues where you need to refer back to that particular version. But every single flow that you've authored in Cloudflow Designer will open and be editable in Lightning Flow Builder going forward.
Great. Will my existing flows stop working when the new Flow Builder comes out in Spring 19?
No, all your existing flows will keep working as they are. Whatever is active will keep working as they are with no changes to the runtime or the logic or the way they work when the new flow builder goes out in Spring 19. No changes to existing flows that are active.
Great. Do I have to be on Lightning Experience to use the new Lightning Flow Builder?
No, you do not have to be in Lightning Experience to use the new Lightning Flow Builder. For auto launch flows that have no UI, it obviously doesn't matter what experience you're in. For flows that have UI, if you use the new Lightning Flow Builder and embed Lightning components into flow screens or some of our new Lightning component-based screen fields that Alex has been releasing, like dependent pick lists, you need to be able to embed the Lightning runtime into Classic. So the short story there is you can obviously use Lightning Flow Builder for any auto-launched or screen flows that don't use Lightning components in their UI. But as soon as you start using Lightning components in the UI, you need to be able to embed flow into Classic using Lightning Out. So let me know if that makes sense. But obviously, you can use it. If you start using Lightning UI functionality, you need to be able to think through all the implications of embedding Lightning UI functionality into Classic.
If you're using the builder itself, if you're designing with the builder, you need to be in Lightning?
No, you do not need to be in Lightning if you're just designing with the builder.
What happens to the fast update, fast create elements, which we've used in existing flows?
The behavior of fast create and fast update will keep working exactly as you expect. No changes to the underlying behavior. The element itself will get renamed to record update or record lookup or get record. That's right. And if you open up the element, you'll notice that it is in fast mode. So it'll be entirely obvious to you when you look at the element how it's working, and the functionality of how it works is not going to change.
We basically figured out how to combine those to make it a little more concise and easy to understand.
Any news on when flows will be available to be templated for ISV partners?
Yeah, so I actually covered that in our roadmap. In our spring release, we will have the availability of flow templates. And so we'll probably be able to demo that pretty soon. Basically, what you can do is you can go to a flow, and in the flow definition information, you basically select it as a template. And that means that when you package it up and that package gets installed, we will trigger off of that to allow the flow to then be viewable in the designer. And then you can save it as a different name. And this would be the subscriber, of course, in that case. And that which means they can then edit it and leverage it inside of their org. And then when you go ahead and upgrade, it'll still go ahead and upgrade that original template that you had created.
Is there an offline tool to build flow and the upload sync or to or with Salesforce?
No, there is no offline tool to go ahead and build flow. The flow designer, the flow builder that we're coming out with will require you to be online when you're building it. If you're using field service Lightning, you can actually create flows for field service Lightning that run offline on the phone, but that is not a designer tool. Like, you still have to design the flow using Flow Builder.
Someone's asking about attaching the link of the new Lightning component available in the new Flow Builder in spring 2019. Is there a way you can share that?
That will be part of our release notes. So every single new component that is available by default will get included in our release notes for spring. I believe the release notes go into preview sometime middle of December and are finalized in early January. To get a list of new Lightning components for flow screens that we included out of the box in winter, please refer to the release notes for winter 19.
Great. And just a reminder that this is being recorded, and we'll send an email with the recording and the slide deck. All right, more questions. Are we able to use validation rules that already exist on an object?
So the way to answer that is, if you're creating that object or updating it from Flow, those validation rules will run, because those validation rules run as part of the save order. I don't believe, and Alex and Jason, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe there's a way to refer to those validation rules or bring them up in the Flow Designer. I think that just happens outside of the context of Flow. So it's just part of the save order. And it's something that will obviously be in effect, but it's not something that you could like directly look at in the Flow Builder.
I think normally we think of this as sort of your screen-based input style validation versus sort of your database or update create style validation, right? So the object and the validation rule-based validation for create or update would trigger regardless when you do that inside of a process. But in a screen, you do have the capability of actually having a validation that happens when you fill out that information on the screen.
And we have an excited attendee here. Did I hear that right? Can we make external callouts from flows? Wow.
Yeah, definitely. There's actually a number of ways you can do it. You can do it via Apex. That's sort of the traditional way of doing it. But yes, external services, if you have an Open API or Swagger based endpoint that you want to use, all you have to do is copy and paste that in. And there's an OAuth credential associated with that. And as I demoed to you, you're at that point you're off to the races. Then of course the other option is you can go ahead and do platform events, which you can actually publish from both Flow and Process Builder, and you can subscribe to them as well from both Flow and Process Builder. So that's another integration. It's more asynchronous in that particular scenario. And then finally, you can use browser-based local actions, which will allow you to do callouts directly from the browser. So those don't necessarily transit Salesforce. There's obviously their own sort of pros and cons of that sort of methodology, but you can actually do that as well. So yeah, 4 different ways of basically making external callouts, and all of them work pretty seamlessly in our Flow environment.
Is there a way to monitor the flows? The way to say watch and maybe cancel, restart the flow in question, if any?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually, as I mentioned on our roadmap, are looking to being able to provide better metrics around these flows. And our current sort of thinking around that is that we would probably have sort of a basic dashboard that you could look at, and that would sort of be a view-only type of view into what's going on with the different flows, which processes, how long they're executing, things like that. If you want to do more sort of alerting or monitoring off of that, we would probably, and again, this is all safe harbor because it's still in sort of thoughtful development and sketching phases and whatnot, be able to say use an eventing system, so say like our event monitoring, to be able to get that information as well.
Thanks. Can external processes invoke flows?
Yeah, you can invoke a flow from any external process by simply making a REST call into the Salesforce endpoint that invokes a flow. So once you kind of establish a way for your external service or process or software to make REST calls to Salesforce, that's always going to be available. You also can invoke a flow by firing a platform event that is picked up by Salesforce. And platform events can be subscribed to by Process Builder processes, which in turn can launch flows. So you've got a couple different ways you can do that.
Yeah, that's correct. You have those 2 versions, and then also I think last year we introduced the ability to actually dynamically class flow names via Apex and call it that way. So if you want to use an external service to call some Apex code that's being run, and then that actually calls a flow, that's also another possibility. Again, depending on how you want to build it.
Are there currently any known missing features in the Lightning Flow Builder versus the existing Flow Builder?
Was the question about missing features? Is that correct?
Yeah. So, are there any currently features in Lightning
gaps in Flow Builder? You're going to see a couple. We didn't have time to get undo redo into Flow Builder for the Spring 19 release, so that's going to come in the summer release. We also didn't get a time to get copy and paste of elements in. if you work with rich text edit, then you're going to see that where the old Cloudflow Designer was able to display rich text in its full rich textiness while you are inside of design mode, Flow Builder doesn't quite do that in Spring 19. And those are the main things that I'm aware of, but those are all top priority for the Summer 19 release.
Great. And we have a number of questions about debugging, about there being an easier way, or like what's the best way to debug a flow if you run into issues. Can you walk through that?
Yeah, in fact, I'm just seeing if Jason can actually show you our new debugger.
Okay, so this is actually our debugger. As you saw, for any given flow, all I have to do is click on the debug button. And I have a couple options here. You can specify the input variables that you'd like to have when you debug this particular flow, and then you just click on run. And so in this case, as you can see, this is the screen that is actually being shown. These are the selections that you can make. And then when I click next, it actually runs through all the different logic that's actually happening, and it keeps going as I move through the particular flow. So you can see here, this is a decision node that was actually run, the evaluation that happened. We did some assignments to basically change up our stages here, etc. So yeah, it allows you to step through each and every page, and it provides all the information, the evaluation information that's actually happening at every point, every screen, and every point inside of the flow.
Will Flow have some error handling and exception logging and an exception logging step?
There's fault nodes, which is a good way to catch errors, right? So I'd urge whoever asked that question to take a look at fault nodes and how to use that and best practices around that. And then Alex.
There's a couple of other techniques you can use to increase the amount of logging in particular flows or areas of flow. It's very easy to fire a platform event from a particular part of the flow. And when I want to get increased logging, what I'll do is I'll add a couple of platform events that I then subscribe to with some sort of tool like a logging service that I use so that I can integrate those pieces of log information with the other logging that I'm gathering.
It's also worth noting that we made some improvements in winter to our error message logging, where we're actually, say for Process Builder, for example, surfacing the actual associated error message. So that was a question that came up quite often. Like say a validation rule, triggers an error, what validation rule would happen there. And so we actually now present that error information, and you can bubble it up to the user as well. And it's also captured inside the error emails. And in fact, while I'm on that note, you can actually use Apex distribution list for who receives the error email, and the error emails actually also provide the associated org ID as well as the error ID, so that way you would know where and when that actually happened.
And final question before we go back to the slides to close out. Can flows be used by high volume community users?
Can be used in communities.
Yes. I guess, so yes, they can be used by high volume community users. We don't, we have a number of our orgs and our customers that are running hundreds of millions of flows a month in their orgs. So most sort of high volume, questions that we get, our answer is, yeah, sure. I mean, people are doing this in production today. We actually introduced the capability in winter for guest users on communities to actually go ahead and run flows as well. That's something you have to enable, because again, it sort of opens up the pipe a bit in terms of what you can actually handle. But it's definitely possible and enabled now for guest users to run flows on communities as well.
Cool, thanks. If we want to head to the next slide, I think you had a few things you wanted to mention, Jason.
Yes, so thanks everyone for tuning in. We've got a lot of resources and very rich documentation and stuff out there. So here's a couple examples. There's the Lightning Flow Trailhead module. I'll ask you to go ahead and check that out. Arnab showed you a little bit of the trailhead. We've got a lot of trailheads around Flow. They're all very interesting. A lot of your questions can be answered there. We actually have our Lightning Flow Developer Center, which is sort of your one-stop shop for seeing different videos and webinars and examples that we have around Flow as well. And then we also have our unofficial Flow website, which is an possible unofficial flow of unofficial, potentially Lightning Flow related resources. There's a URL there. You can check that out. People that have, community source screen components, things like that might be pretty interesting for folks. And then just to touch on the Lightning Flow Dev Center a little bit more, we do have, here's an example of what it looks like, Trailhead, webinars, lots of demo videos, and all sorts of great stuff to sort of get you kickstarted and help you understand how to develop more with Lightning Flow. Actually, while I'm on the topic, on my CI/CD slides also link to the Dreamforce session where we live demoed actually being able to package and deploy through a CI/CD process with version control. I think for a lot of the DevOps style geeks out there, this would be super, super cool. So definitely check out that session where I worked with Karen Fidelic on our SFDX team on that. And with that,
yep, thank you, Jason. And just a reminder to share your feedback with us so we can make webinars like this even better. So please make sure to fill out the survey at the end of the webinar. And that concludes today's conversation. Thanks everyone for joining. We hope you attend more of our webinars in the future and enjoy the rest of your day.